Hey, I'm Sadi and welcome to Sadi's Tea, questioning the fact that this kit wasn't just P-Bandai, as the HGUC 138 Marasai unicorn version is essentially a 7-year-old kit at the time recolored and repackaged. I'm not complaining, I mean you're on Sadi's Tea, where I often gush about models and talk just a bit too much. And since we already did get a prior release of the Marasai, I want to approach this review with the idea of this being essentially a full package Marasai. And speaking of packaging, this lovely box art of the Marasai in the Attack of Torrenton base was drawn by Magaki Ryota, a name that isn't all too common in HGUC boxes. I hadn't gotten any kits with this artist before, and when I looked them up, the first results yielded was from Danboru and Hentai. Tracks for a mecha artist, honestly. Oh hey, it's the Daime. Ma'am, can I ask you, why is your figure 30,000 yen? Upon opening up the box, you get the same forerunners and the polycap runner of the original Marasai, with some slight additions but they're basically the same all around. Along with that, you also get this new runner labeled Weapon 01 just for the rifle, and floating around inside as well was this funny little wire that's important for another weapon. Also inside of course is the manual, typical 4-page foldout for HG kits, and yes, this manual is Unicorn Marasai specific. And here's the HGUC Marasai that took me around 90 minutes to snap build, and immediately I'm impressed. Though before we go any further, the main difference between the Zeta and Unicorn version of the Marasai is going to be here on the backpack. These circular pieces now match the color of the limbs and head, whereas on the original it matches the entire assembly. I mean there's also the obvious difference. I'm keeping it Zeta style for now to judge this as both kits. As for a bit of context, the Marasai was actually the first HGUC release of 2005, coming right after Bandai's 0080 craze in HGUC, literally following the 051 Gym Command space type. And if we take that gem as the baseline grunt of the era, then the Marasai was a clear step forward. Proportionally, this model is incredibly faithful to the MS design. It's impressive with how accurate all the shapes and details are, with all the smooth plates and rounded edges that makes this kit look surprisingly animation accurate. This really was when HGUC started getting quite good in segmenting their parts. Like here on the bell-bottom shins, the design itself was cleverly broken down, with these large panels having natural panel lines, and the smaller details being their own separate pieces, giving us a very clean shin that's nice to look at, as there's only but one small seam line to worry about. Unfortunately, a lot of the other seam lines are a lot more noticeable, like the ones here on the thighs, torso sides, forearms, though it is partially covered up by the armor, the backpack, and the spike shoulder. Fortunately, this was the first HGUC kit to have spikes molded as separate pieces, so that's another major upgrade that this kit brings. But by far the worst seam line has to be the one on the snout because it ends up cutting through the mouth vents. I do realize that this may have been the only way to really mold the headpiece without going the master grade route, but it still sucks, and I can't wait to remove it after this video. And yeah, the mono eye, or the lack of one, does mean that you only get a static sticker, but you do have the choice between Angie or normal circle for this. But you also get black stickers for the mono eye track and the snout, and finally one for the back camera. Now, if we were just talking about the Zeta Marasai, then besides the forearm armor and the gray segments on the feet, this model is essentially spot on, and that's really impressive for a kit from 2005. However, this being the unicorn version means that paint is now your unfortunate ally, as there's a lot of added extra colors like gray for inside of the shoulder shield and outside all the verniers, as you'd have to paint the insides in red. And speaking of visual improvements, just take a look at the rounded hands. What a glow up from the older kits, and it very clearly influenced the common modern rounded hands. Oddly enough though, you only get 3 hands, which isn't really common in HGUC kits. You get a single left hand that works well as relaxed, loose holding, or weapon support, with the only caveat being it's not the best in all of them, though I do really like the sculpt and I might end up recasting it for other model kits. And if you do the math correctly, you're gonna get 2 right hands, one being a gripping hand that can hold onto the beam saber stored on the shield. Interestingly, the fingers use a slide-off connection similar to master grades, which is something you never see anywhere else in high grades, so this clearly was just Bandai experimenting. The hilts of course accept beam saber blades, and this was the kit that then made it standard to use clear beams on mainline HG models. It wasn't the first kit to have them. I mean, if we're being technical, it's been around since the start with the 002 Gyan, so really, this concept isn't all too noble, especially since the hilts aren't actually the common 1.5 holes. Hey, Floor Sadi over here coming at you at the floor with a voice crack. and fan noises. So I was told through Discord that apparently the Marasai's beam sabers should be the standard 1.5. I have here the Marasai's beam, don't ask why it bent, and I have here my accessories, and here is where the beam sabers are. This is an unmodified beam saber that came from the HGUC 021 Gundam RX-78, and upon checking, weirdly snug. But the better question is it because of the hilts? I tested it with multiple beams and for some reason it just wouldn't accept anything. And so I have here a reserve stock of SB6 and SB13 beams. These have never been touched. All I did was I took them from the model kit box and then I put them in my drawer of spare beams. Here's testing in SB6. And it doesn't fit well. Wait. One problematic thing about beams is that this is a softer form of polystyrene. Clear polystyrene to be exact. This easily gets molded because of, you know, how moldy it is. That is not the right word for that. So will it still connect? Oh no. Oh no! And the other right hand is a trigger finger, meant to hold onto the beam. You call that a rifle? It's a simple design, just two main pieces in the barrel, though the oddly long side handle and the magazine are removable, which is a great touch. May need a bit of color for the pipes here, but that's really nothing new. And you might have also noticed this odd peg on the rifle grip, which is essentially the forerunner to the more modern tab and slot connection system. The rounded peg that fits onto the bottom of the palm is a bit unusual, and it's clear that Bandai was just experimenting here. But don't forget, we're taking a look at the unicorn version, which includes the Fedayeen rifle and the Sea Serpent. The rifle uses the same pieces that we got in the 058 Gabthle. Am I saying that right? Gabthle? God, why is it named like that? And it is actually very well made with moving parts, like this sling mount, I think. Why would a 17-meter mech need a sling? And also these hook things on the back that I don't know what it's for. It's on a polycap so it can move, probably to clear it out of the way for poses, but again, I don't even know if it should. All I really know is that you can put the beam saber on the opposite end of the muzzle, and the rifle is now a really long beam saber handle. That's awesome! Though if you're wondering, the muzzle itself isn't actually hollowed out, meaning that you can't put any effect parts onto it. Then there's the Sea Serpent, a grappling weapon that can send out electrical shocks. So of course, that's where this bendy wire comes into play. Kinky bastard. All you really need to do is remove the tip so you can plug the wire into it, more like putting it between those slots, and into the hilt. The bendy wire actually does a pretty damn good job at keeping the poses, if the hilt doesn't twist. And overall, it doesn't look too shabby despite this being a single color. I mean, at least it's the correct color. P Bandai Master Grade, by the way. Since neither weapon were specifically made for the Marasai, handling them is a bit on the awkward side. The Sea Serpent doesn't lock into the hands unless angled, so it's kinda like it's being fired, though it's still not going to be safe from twisting a bit. Probably tighten up the grips. But the rifle really doesn't sit well in the trigger finger hands, often causing the front fingers to split or even end up popping off. Every HG Unicorn Marasai with the rifle has the front split showing. Even the manual has it. Although the upside to this is, the loose grip does make rifle poses a lot less clumsy to achieve. And thankfully, the beam saber mode is a lot better. Still rotates a bit, but it's much more manageable. So while the compatibility of the extra accessories is a bit iffy, they are all still really cool, and the extra 200 yen in retail was worth it for the full Marasai experience. That still stumps me to this day on how this wasn't just a P Bandai kit. It's gonna be a pain for me to choose what weapon I'd want to display this guy with. They're all shelf-worthy in my eyes. But the fun isn't of course just in the accessories. The model can actually pose pretty well, with a ball joint on the head, and the base of the neck even has that extra hinge joint. Though still, you don't get much up and down, but the head can turn. And as far as I know, the fin was made with a flexible polystyrene. Still doesn't change the fact that it induces incredible amounts of anxiety in me. Look at my hands shaking. Shoulders can swing out on a butterfly joint, head can rotate 360. The right shoulder moves a full 90 degrees outwards, however the left side is of course limited by the spiked shoulder pad, which is on a ball joint and hinge, so they can move out of the way a bit for extra range. As for the shoulder shield, it can also rotate a full 360, and there's a hinge joint on both the connection point and both of the shields. That gives the entire shield a lot of range and possibilities. Definitely one of the best aspects about this model kit. Bicep swivel, a 90-degree elbow that feels a bit weird, but it's the forearm armor giving off that illusion. And of course, the common ball-jointed wrist. Yippee! Limited waist swivel because of the pipes, and the front skirts can move up this much, and yes, you can actually split it like how I did here on the back skirts, although they do get a bit loose. And the side skirts can also move out the same amount, so there's actually quite a lot of clearance. Now the legs can move forwards and backwards 90 degrees, and spread outward to around 45. A bit unfortunate, but that's just what you get with ball joints. And that ball joint allows for a slight thigh swivel, double jointed knees to around 90 degrees, and finally a ball joint in the ankles that allows for pretty decent range all around, except for backwards as the bell-bottom curse strikes again. So despite all the improvements in aesthetics, the Marasai still does have a similar level of flexibility to the older HG kits. If we take a look at the main pieces that make up the Marasai, we can see that while there has been slight tinkering, it very much still uses the common connections of the prior models. However, the addition of the butterfly joints and the back skirts, plus the multi-joint shield, does give this kit a clear step up above its precursors in terms of flexibility, showing that Bandai was innovating on their plastic models bit by bit. But one odd shift that I'm not fond of is the size. Putting the Marasai next to other mobile suits makes this suit look surprisingly large. The model itself stands at around 13 centimeters, so it's not crazy tall. Doesn't even outsize the typical anime figures, like the Figma style's female-bodied Chiaki, the Furyu Takaradarika, and the Sekipian figure Osuki Mamako. And to prove this, using Hobby Clubhouse's 1/144th scale ruler will show you exactly what I mean. The fact that it's a whole meter taller, making everything just a bit bigger than it's supposed to be. And to sell at home, here's the 051 Gym Command Space Type, the model kit that came out just right before this, and it's in the correct 18-meter height. I'm genuinely at a loss for words. After just coming from an era where HGUC models were almost on the dot with their height, yes, I was wrong in the DJ video, please shut up, the Marasai's size really threw me off. It's not a deal breaker, of course, on the contrary, it's an invitation for me to customize this kit. Though it is unfortunate that it's inherently there, as besides that one stray fault, the HGUC Marasai kit is really good. Again, after just coming from an era where articulation was just the bare basics, this model was the forefront to the more advanced HGUC models we've come to love. I've seen a handful of collectors get this kit and just fell in love. It's simple fun and very satisfying in the hand. Sure, it is slightly dated with the connections and joints, but it's very much not hindering any sort of fun. And for an extra 200 yen to get the unicorn version, the extra accessories adds just that extra bit of play value. Honestly, I'd recommend this kit to any high-grade collector. It doesn't ask for much, and still you get an incredibly satisfactory result, especially for being a humble grunt model from 2005. A fun little addition to your collection, a model worthy of a project, and a kit that's just begging to be bought multiple times for an army. And that concludes my HGUC Marasai review. If you'd like to support what we do here on Sadi's Tea, consider giving this video a like, sharing the video around, and subscribing to the channel so you'd catch up on all the latest reviews we have here on Sadi's Tea. Or you can check out my social media sites for earlier updates. All support is very much welcome. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for stopping by for some tea!